My name is Iris Outen. I'm 33, and within 7 months, I buried both of my parents. I sold our old family home in Greenville, North Carolina, and bought a small condo near the coast, 2 blocks from the water. On the morning of the second day there, before I had even unpacked the kitchen, my adopted brother Trent walked in, picked up my keys from the entry table, and slipped them into his jacket pocket. "You don't need this place," he said. "Tomorrow, I'm traveling with my wife's family. I can drop you at a shelter on the way." I stood there without arguing. An hour later, I sent him 3 words: "Look inside Dad's lockbox." He called me back 4 minutes later. But what happened over the next 28 days was the part nobody, including me, expected. Welcome back to the channel. This is a place for women who set boundaries the right way, with documents, dignity, and the courage to stay calm while everyone else is losing control. If you've ever been the one carrying the responsibility while the rest of the family simply collected the benefits, this story is for you. Leave a comment, subscribe, and stay to the end, because what happened at that beach reception is something you'll want to hear. The 14 months before my mother passed away were the hardest months of my life. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. By the time the scans came back, treatment was possible, but a cure was not. I asked my boss at Puig & Hayes, the probate firm where I'd worked as a paralegal for 10 years, if I could switch to remote work. He approved it that same hour. So I packed my laptop into the guest room of the house on Elm Street and moved back home. My mother's name was Helen. She had been a kindergarten teacher for 27 years before the diagnosis. We turned my childhood bedroom into a hospice room. The hospital bed arrived on a Wednesday. The oxygen machine hummed at the foot of the bed for more than a year after that. I learned how to replace a cannula at 3 in the morning without turning on the light. I learned which Walmart sold the cheapest cases of Ensure. I learned my mother could still squeeze my hand, even after she lost the strength to speak clearly. My brother Trent visited 3 times. I want to be exact about that, because later people kept saying, everyone handles grief differently. 3 visits in 14 months, around 2 hours each. His wife, Whit, never came inside the house. One time she dropped him off in the driveway and waited in the car with the engine running. He stayed 40 minutes that day. I wasn't angry then. I was too exhausted to feel angry. Anger requires energy, and I had none left. I kept a yellow legal pad on the kitchen counter where I wrote reminders like, replace tubing Thursday, refill anti-nausea meds, call about catheter supplies. That was where my mind stayed. The part of me that could actually feel things had been folded away somewhere for later. Dad died first. A sudden heart attack in January. He was watering the rose bushes when it happened. The neighbor found him collapsed in the grass. I drove home from work and sat beside him until the funeral home arrived. Mom watched from the kitchen window because she was too weak to walk outside. She didn't cry until 2 days later in the casket showroom when she placed her hand on the lid of the simple pine coffin and whispered, he would have hated the brass handles. After that, it was just the 2 of us. Me, her, the lesson plans she still traced with 1 finger, and the cancer. Mom died in October on a Tuesday morning with her hand resting over mine. The hospice nurse, a soft-spoken woman named Anita, stayed with me for 2 hours afterward. She barely said anything, she simply stayed. I never forgot that. The funeral took place the following Saturday at Riverside Cemetery in Greenville. Light rain. Around 40 people in dark coats. I ordered the standing sprays myself, the program leaflets, the soloist. I called the church and wrote the obituary in the kitchen at 1 in the morning, while a cup of tea went cold beside my laptop. Trent arrived 20 minutes late. Whit was driving. The first thing I heard her say while crossing the wet grass was, "I told you we should have left earlier. Parking here is terrible." Then she kissed my cheek. She had never kissed my cheek before. "Iris," she whispered, "I'm so sorry for your loss." It was the most personal sentence she had ever spoken to me. Trent hugged me. I let him. He smelled like expensive cologne that didn't quite fit him. He had gained weight since I'd last seen him, and his eyes were red. He cried during the service. Whit reached across him and patted his hand twice. After the burial, everyone returned to the Elm Street house for sandwiches and coffee. I had hired a teenage girl from church to help refill platters. I was rinsing forks in the kitchen when Whit cornered me. She had brought a friend I'd never met before, a woman in her 60s with a blonde bob and careful makeup. "This is my mother, Diane Caldwell," Whit said. "She drove up from Wilmington just to be here." Diane took my hand in both of hers. "Sweetheart, we are so sorry." Her grip stayed a second longer than I expected. Then Whit casually asked, "Did your mom ever mention her jewelry? Any of the pieces?" I placed the fork into the drying rack without answering. I picked up the empty sandwich tray, carried into the dining room, and replaced it with a fresh one. When I returned, Trent was standing in the hallway looking down at me. He had apparently come from upstairs, near Dad's office. I hadn't seen him go up there. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, glancing around. 3 months later, on a Friday in mid-January, we sat in the conference room of Bryson & Park, the small estate law firm in downtown Greenville that had handled my parents' paperwork for 15 years. Tom Bryson read the will aloud. He was 72, gentle, and the kind of attorney who still wore bow ties. The will was clear and specific. The house at 1418 Elm Street and all its contents were left to me. The codicil, signed and notarized 14 months before Mom died, stated the gift was in recognition of Iris's role as primary caregiver to both parents during their final years. The brokerage account, the term life insurance policy, my father's pickup truck, and the savings account at First Citizens were split 60-40, with the larger share going to Trent. Tom explained that the total value was intended to be balanced once the house appraisal and maintenance costs were considered. Trent's face turned red across the forehead, but he stayed quiet. Whit did not. She raised her hand like she was in school. "Mr. Bryson, just to clarify, this version is the valid one, correct? There isn't an earlier draft?" "This is the only executed will," Tom answered. "Signed in July. Codicil added the following October, both notarized." Whit nodded slowly. "Got it. Just making sure." I said nothing in that room. I signed the acknowledgement papers, shook Tom's hand, and walked out into the parking lot while Trent and Whit followed 10 steps behind. At my car, Whit caught up to me and placed her hand lightly on my forearm. Her wedding ring had a larger diamond than I remembered. "Iris," she said in her soft voice, "we should really sit down together as a family. We need to be honest about splitting this fairly so nobody feels uncomfortable." I looked at her hand, then at her face. "The will says what Dad wanted," I replied. "I didn't write it." She smiled tightly and stepped back. That afternoon, I drove to Puet and Hayes and requested certified copies of every estate document. 1 copy for the office, 1 copy for myself. Then I drove to the SunTrust branch on Memorial Drive and rented safety deposit box 247. I placed the documents inside and personally slid the drawer shut. That night, standing in the kitchen, I noticed the small brass key hanging above the sink. Dad's cedar lockbox key. I didn't open it yet. 5 months passed. I lived alone in the house and worked from the kitchen table. Dad's office stayed closed. Mom's reading chair sat untouched in the den. I changed the sheets in my old bedroom every 2 weeks because the smell of hospice didn't fully disappear until the 3rd change. One Saturday in April, I stood in the living room holding coffee and staring at the wallpaper. Pale green vines hung there since 1989. Dad had complained about it for 30 years. That was when I realized I couldn't stay another month. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a museum I had become the unpaid caretaker of, and I was the only visitor left. I called a realtor Monday morning. The house was listed Wednesday. Open house Sunday. By Tuesday, we had 3 offers, and by Thursday, I accepted one. A young couple expecting their 2nd child bought it for $410,000. The husband had grown up 2 streets away. Closing was set for 35 days later. I didn't tell Trent until after the contract was signed. I called him from my car in the grocery store parking lot, the kind of call you make when you don't want to leave room for an argument. "You're selling Mom and Dad's house?" he asked sharply. "It isn't Mom and Dad's house anymore," I said. "It's mine under the will, and I can't stay here. I'm selling it and buying a condo on the coast." There was a long silence. Then I heard Whit speaking in the background. Trent covered the phone for a second. When he returned, his tone had changed completely. "Honey," he said. He had never called me that before. "We really need to talk about this money. Whit and I have been discussing a few things and we could really use. I have to go, I interrupted. I'm at Harris Teeter. Then I hung up. I should have recognized the warning signs. Anyone with a normal sibling probably would have. But after spending 14 months pretending I wasn't drowning, denial had become a habit. So I kept moving forward. I packed the house in 8 weeks. I found the condo in Corolla over 3 weekends. I paid cash, $340,000 for a 1-bedroom unit on the 4th floor, 2 blocks from the Currituck Sound. Move-in date, the first weekend of June. I still hadn't opened Dad's lockbox. I almost did twice, but decided to wait until I was settled. The movers finished before lunch. 8 boxes from Greenville. 2 pieces of furniture I kept, Mom's reading chair and Dad's cedar lockbox. I personally supervised the loading of the box, so nothing would happen to it during the move. It had sat in the corner of Dad's office since I was a child. He built it himself in 1991 from leftover cedar wood from a barn project. 22 inches long, 16 wide, 10 deep, brass corners, and a small lock he installed himself. The movers placed it on the second shelf of my bedroom closet. When I shut the closet door, the cedar smell lingered like a held breath. After they left, I stood on the balcony for a long time. The condo was small, 640 square feet, 1 bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a balcony barely large enough for 2 folding chairs. It wasn't exactly oceanfront, but the salt air still carried from the sound. On clear days, you could see the Corolla lighthouse in the distance. The HOA fee was $315 a month. I checked the math 4 times. I could afford it alone on my salary. I had done it. That evening, I walked to the beach and sat in the sand wearing work pants while the June wind blew through my hair. For the first time in 5 months, the first time since Mom died, I cried. Quiet tears. Nothing dramatic, just grief finally slipping out, and underneath the grief was something unexpected. Relief. Like a heavy suitcase I'd carried for years had finally been set down. That night, I slept 9 straight hours. The first full night of sleep I'd had in over a year. 2 weeks earlier, I had given Trent the building's visitor code after he offered to help with the move. I declined the help, but the offer felt sincere enough. I told him the code anyway in case of emergencies. The cedar box stayed unopened in the closet. I told myself I would finally open it Saturday. I had time now, Sunday morning, June 2nd. I woke up at 7, made coffee in the new percolator, and carried the mug onto the balcony. The sound was perfectly still. A heron stood motionless in the shallow water far out in the distance. I sat there in my robe thinking, I'm going to do this every morning for the rest of my life. At 9:14, a red Ford F-150 pulled into the visitor lot. I noticed because the lot was almost empty and because the truck parked diagonally across 2 spaces, exactly how Trent always parked. I watched from the balcony as Trent stepped out wearing a polo shirt and shorts, sunglasses resting on his head. Whit got out from the passenger side in white capri pants, sandals, and carrying an oversized purse. They walked straight to the building entrance. Trent typed the visitor code into the keypad, the same code I'd given him for emergencies. He used it now like it belonged to him. My stomach tightened. 40 seconds later, someone knocked on my door. They hadn't called from the lobby. They hadn't called from the parking lot. They hadn't even called the night before. They had simply arrived. I opened the door wearing my robe. Trent walked directly into the condo without waiting for permission. He scanned the living room slowly, the way someone evaluates property before buying it, then sat down in my new white linen armchair. Whit entered behind him and quietly locked the deadbolt. Then she smiled at me, the same soft smile she used at the funeral. "This place is cute, Iris," she said. "Really cute." I should have recognized it from the moment he sat down, from the moment she locked the door, from the way his sunglasses ended up on my coffee table beside my book like he owned the space already. I still poured them both coffee. That was the kind of person I was back then. Trent accepted the cup but never drank from it. He leaned back into my chair. "So look," he began, "Whit and I were talking last night, and honestly, this whole thing, the condo, the move, it's a lot for someone alone." He gestured around the room. "This is a lot of monthly expense for one person who just lost her parents." "It's 640 square feet," I said, "and I can afford it." Whit jumped in with her practiced sympathetic tone. "Sweetheart, Honestly, this is too much for one person. We've been worried about you. Then Trent stood, walked to the entry table, and picked up my keys from the ceramic bowl I'd owned since college. Front door key. Mailbox key. He looked at them for a moment before sliding them into the inside pocket of his jacket and zipping it shut. I watched him do the entire thing. "You don't need this house," Trent said. He used the same voice our father once used on the dog when it misbehaved. "Tomorrow, Whit's family and I are driving to Asheville for the week. We can drop you at a shelter on the way." Whit nodded. "Just for a little while. Then we can sort everything out more rationally. Bart said he can help with the listing." "Bart?" I asked. "My brother, the realtor," she replied. "He thinks we could get $380 for this place, maybe more during tourist season. Let us help you." At that moment, her phone screen lit up beside her on the couch. Zillow agent notification. Listing draft. Address line 4127 Soundfront Way, Unit 412. My address. She noticed me reading it and quickly flipped the phone face down. I stayed silent for a full second before saying, "Okay." They both looked surprised. "Okay?" Trent repeated. "You have the keys," I said calmly. "I think this conversation is finished." Nobody moved for nearly half a minute. I think they expected tears, pleading, panic, the version of me they thought still existed. The exhausted caregiver still carrying hospice grief around like a fog. I think Whit had rehearsed the entire mediation speech during the drive over. Instead, I simply stood there holding my coffee. "Iris," Whit said carefully, "we're trying to help you." "I heard you," I replied. Trent glanced at his wife. She glanced at her phone. "So you're okay with this?" he asked. "You're okay letting us handle things?" "I think you should leave," I said. "You've got a long drive to Asheville tomorrow. You'll probably want to rest." "Iris, honey," Whit tried again, stepping closer. "At least let me hug you." I took one clean step backward into the kitchen. The counter now stood between us. She stopped immediately. "Okay," she said brightly, like we had just finalized a deal. "We'll call tonight and work everything out." They left the same way they entered. Trent grabbed his sunglasses. Whit collected her purse and phone. He paused at the door as though he wanted to say something authoritative, but nothing came out. Then they walked away. The deadbolt was still locked from when Whit touched it earlier. I unlocked it, opened the door, and watched them disappear into the elevator. Trent never looked back. When the doors closed, I shut my own door and locked the deadbolt myself. Then I walked to the kitchen drawer beside the refrigerator. Taped to the inside back wall in a small Ziploc bag was a second set of keys to the condo. I had duplicates made the day I closed on the property. 10 years working probate teaches you to prepare for situations exactly like this. I sat down and made another coffee. Then I picked up my phone and opened Trent's contact information. His photo was an old one from his high school graduation. I was 12 in the picture, standing beside him with my arm around his waist. I had cropped Mom and Dad out years ago because I liked the image of just the two of us. I liked the idea of having an older brother. I opened the message box and typed 3 words, "Look inside Dad's lockbox." I reread the message once. Then I pressed send. 4 minutes passed. 4 minutes and 12 seconds according to the microwave clock. Then my phone started vibrating with Trent's name across the screen. I let it ring. Voicemail picked up. I muted the phone. Then I called Carolyn Puitt. Carolyn was the named partner at Puitt and Hayes. She hired me when I was 23, and my only qualification was a community college legal assistant certificate. She taught me how wills get challenged, how codicils hold up in court, how to read a deed in under 90 seconds. She was 58, gray-haired, divorced twice, and answered work calls even on Sundays. "Iris," she said immediately, "tell me what happened." "He came over," I said. "He took my keys. He said he'd drop me at a shelter." There was a short silence on her end, the kind lawyers make while deciding whether to respond as attorneys or friends first. "All right," she finally said. "Monday morning, my office, 8:30. Bring your phone and every text message. Don't engage with them. Don't argue. Let them keep talking." "Already doing it," I replied. "That's my girl. The certified will copies are in box 247 at SunTrust Memorial," I added. "I'll pick them up tomorrow morning." "Good," she said. "Bring everything." After hanging up, I pulled out the same yellow legal pad I used during hospice care. The pad where I once wrote things like replace tubing Thursday now held new notes. Monday, SunTrust, 247. Concierge, do not allow Trent upstairs. Reeky deadbolt tonight. I underlined the last item twice. Then I called Coastal Lock and Key in Corolla and booked a same-day appointment for 5 o'clock. The first voicemail from Trent arrived at 11:43. It was the first of 5. I let every single one go to voicemail. After listening to them, I wrote down the time and a short summary beside each call on the legal pad. I never responded. Iris, what lockbox? I don't know what you're talking about. Call me back. Confused, trying to sound casual. Look, I'm not in the mood for games. Whit thinks you're messing with us. Call me back. Annoyed. Whit audible in the background. 1:55. I just got off the phone with Whit's mom. She thinks you're being ungrateful. I told her you've had a hard year. Triangulation, bringing Diane into it. 4:22 p.m. Iris, if you don't call me back by the end of today, I'm contacting a lawyer. I'm serious. We have rights here too. A threat, empty, but still documented. 8:09 p.m. I'm driving to Greenville tomorrow morning. If there's a lockbox at the old house, I'll find it. Whatever's in there isn't yours alone. You don't get to keep things from family. I listened to that last voicemail twice. Not because it scared me, but because I wanted the exact wording for Carolyn. I copied it word for word onto the legal pad. Whatever's in there isn't yours alone. I underlined the sentence. What Trent didn't know was that the house had officially closed on the 28th. The new owners had taken possession the day before. The cedar box was no longer at 1418 Elm Street. It was in my condo closet on the second shelf. If he drove to Greenville, he'd find an empty bedroom and a young father painting it for a nursery. At 5 o'clock, the locksmith arrived. 45 minutes, $210. New deadbolt cylinder, new keys. He handed me 3 copies. I gave one back for their records and tipped him $20. Then I taped the new keys to the inside wall of the kitchen drawer. The following morning, I drove 2 hours to Greenville and opened safety deposit box 247. The SunTrust branch on Memorial Drive was quiet for a Monday morning. I had called ahead. Lorraine, the branch manager I'd known for 6 years, walked me to the room without unnecessary conversation. She unlocked the room, pulled out the drawer, placed it on the table, and left. I sat down, adjusted my reading glasses, and opened the box. There were 3 items inside. The first was the certified copy of my parents' final will and testament, signed in July the year before Mom died. Attached was the codicil signed in October, 3 weeks before her diagnosis became terminal. The codicil clearly stated that the house and all contents were left to me in recognition of Iris's role as primary caregiver to both parents during their final years of life. Attached to it was an affidavit from Tom Bryson confirming both parents were of sound mind, separately interviewed, with no coercion involved. The second item was a handwritten letter from my father, 2 pages of lined notebook paper in his careful engineering school cursive, dated 6 weeks before he died. He couldn't have known how little time he had left. The letter began, "Iris, your mother and I both know who carried this family." He wrote calmly and directly for 2 full pages. He said they had noticed who came to the hospital during his gallbladder surgery in 2019. They noticed who answered the phone every Sunday. They noticed who gave up her social life for 14 months without making herself the center of attention. The last sentence read, "Don't let him take this house from you. Use it for yourself. Promise me." The third item was a sealed cream-colored envelope with my mother's handwriting across the front. "Iris, read when you need it, not before." I didn't open it, not yet. I placed it back beside the will and Dad's letter. Then I photographed every page of the will and the letter with my phone, front and back, and emailed the images directly to Carolyn before leaving the room. I locked the drawer again. The papers didn't smell like cedar. They smelled like vault air and lemon cleaner. They smelled official, solid, like proof. 2 days later, Tuesday afternoon, my condo buzzer sounded. Not the lobby buzzer, the unit buzzer, which meant someone had already gotten upstairs. I checked the peephole. Diane Caldwell stood outside wearing a coral linen dress and carrying a green Pyrex casserole dish with a plastic lid. She noticed the shadow at the peephole and smiled immediately. "Iris, sweetheart, it's Diane. May I come in for just a moment?" I opened the door about 6 inches. "How did you get upstairs?" I asked. "A very kind young man downstairs let me in," she replied warmly. I explained I was visiting my daughter-in-law's sister. I let her step into the entryway, but nowhere farther. I eventually guided her onto the balcony and motioned toward one of the folding chairs. I stayed standing while leaving the sliding door open behind us. She placed the Pyrex dish on the small bistro table between us. A label in black marker read, "Diane Caldwell, Family Cookout 2024. "It's still warm," she said. "Chicken and rice. I make it for anyone going through a difficult time. My pastor swears by it." "That's thoughtful," I said. She talked for nearly 20 minutes about family healing, about Trent crying, about how quickly years disappear, about how regret becomes heavy later in life, about compromise. She used the word sweetheart 11 times. I counted during the second half of the conversation. Then she leaned forward and rested her hand lightly on my knee. "Iris, honey," she said softly, "family doesn't keep secrets from family. We're all trying to find our way back to each other." I ignored that statement completely. Instead, I asked, "Mrs. Caldwell, would you like me to refrigerate the casserole?" She blinked, surprised by the change in direction. "Oh, yes, of course, sweetheart." I carried the Pyrex dish into the kitchen and placed it on the middle shelf beside a half-empty carton of milk. Under the lid was a folded note. I read just enough to see the handwriting. 3 words, "Call your brother." I left the note exactly where it was. Then I returned to the balcony, rested one hand against the sliding door frame, and said calmly, "Mrs. Caldwell, I think it's time for you to leave." So she did. That night, my phone lit up nonstop. Someone had added me back into the family group chat. The chat was called Out in Family. I had quietly left it 4 months earlier because I needed silence. They added me back without asking. Members included Trent, Whit, Diane, Whit's older brother Bart, his wife Linda, and someone named Marlene Caldwell, apparently Whit's cousin from Charlotte. 6 of them. 1 of me. 47 messages arrived within 2 hours. Whit, 8:13 p.m. "Hey Iris, we're worried about you. Please respond. We just want to know you're okay." Trent, 8:15 p.m. "Iris, come on." Diane, 8:20 p.m. "Family, please remember grief affects everyone differently. We need patience with Iris, but we also need firmness. She needs us right now." Bart, 8:31 p.m. "Hey Iris, quick thing. I run Caldwell Coastal Realty. I can list the condo within 48 hours. One of my clients is already looking for a 1-bedroom in season." I read his message twice. He turned a property pitch into a family discussion as if I had requested help. 9:06 p.m. "She always was the favorite. Now she's acting entitled. Sorry, just being honest." Diane, 9:10 p.m. Whitney. 1:11 p.m. "I said sorry." Linda, 9:22 p.m. "Sending prayers and love to everyone during this difficult time." Marlene, 9:45 p.m. "Just catching up on all this. Iris, sweetheart, family lasts forever. Money comes and goes." I screenshotted every message and emailed them to Carolyn in batches. I muted the conversation, but I didn't leave it. Carolyn had specifically told me not to. "Let them talk," she said the night before. "Let them put everything in writing. Writing is evidence." At 10 that night, I sat alone on the balcony, listening to the quiet rush of the sound below. Condo windows glowed in soft yellow squares beneath me. The HOA welcome reception was Saturday. Without even thinking about it, I knew all 4 of them would show up. If you're still here, you already know the feeling this creates. The moment when the quiet person finally brings out the paperwork. Comment 1 word, Lockbox. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let's keep going. The reception was 6 days away. Wednesday morning at 8:30, I drove back to Puet and Hayes and sat in Carolyn's office. She had cleared her schedule for the morning. She reviewed everything on her dual monitors: the will, the codicil, Dad's letter, transcripts from the 5 voicemails, screenshots from the 47 family group chat messages, lobby footage, Robert the concierge emailed me from Sunday morning, and the Zillow draft listing screenshot I captured before Whit flipped her phone over. Carolyn took notes on a yellow legal pad exactly like mine. We had both learned under the same boss decades apart. When she finished, she set her pen down. "Iris," she said, "you have a very clean case." She explained there was no valid equity claim. The codicil was specific. The witnesses were credible. The affidavit was airtight. Trent could hire an attorney, she said. He probably won't, but if he does, That attorney will tell him to walk away. Then she moved to the next issue. Witt's brother exposed himself to unauthorized solicitation under North Carolina real estate rules. Diane exposed herself by spreading false claims about your mental condition to your neighbors. We aren't suing anyone, she continued. We document, we send cease and desist letters, then we move forward with our lives. Okay, I said. I'll have the letters drafted by Friday, 4 envelopes, 1 for each of them. Then she paused and removed her glasses. Iris, may I ask you something as your friend instead of your lawyer? Sure. Why didn't you do this 6 months ago? I thought about the answer before speaking. Because I was tired, I said, and because I kept hoping they would choose differently. I thought maybe Trent would read the will, read Dad's letter, and decide to act like my brother again. I didn't want to be the person escalating things. Carolyn nodded once. And now? She asked. Now, I replied, I'd like you to be my guest Saturday night at the HOA reception. A small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Iris, she said, I'd love to. That same Wednesday afternoon at 2:14, my condo security app sent a notification. Visitor arriving for Unit 412. I opened the camera feed. Trent stood at the front desk. Beside him was a man in a navy work shirt carrying a small tool bag. The shoulder patch read Coastal Lock and Key, the exact company I had used Sunday evening. I almost laughed. Out of every locksmith in Corolla, he picked the same one already in my call history. I immediately called Robert downstairs. Do not let him upstairs, I said. He is not authorized. Yes, ma'am, Robert answered. I switched back to the live camera feed and watched silently. Trent argued at the desk, face red, hands spread wide. The locksmith stood behind him with the patient expression of someone who had seen situations like this before. Robert responded calmly. Trent slapped the desk lightly with his palm. The locksmith stepped backward. 8 minutes later, the locksmith shook his head and walked away. Trent stayed another 4 minutes arguing by himself before Robert picked up the phone. Mine vibrated immediately. Mrs. Outen, Robert said, your brother is requesting a key from the master file. I informed him there isn't one. There isn't, I said. I changed the cylinder Sunday. Yes, ma'am, I assumed so. He's also telling me you're emotionally unstable and he's worried about your safety. I'm perfectly fine, Robert, I said. I'm sitting on my balcony watching the camera feed. Robert chuckled quietly. Understood. I'll escort him out. The keys Trent stole Sunday morning no longer opened anything. The replacements were taped inside my kitchen drawer, where I could see them every time I opened it. Coastal Lock and Key had rekeyed everything before sunset that same day. I still had the receipt. Later, I'd be glad I kept it. Thursday morning, I stepped into the elevator heading toward the mailroom. On the 3rd floor, the doors opened and a woman around 71 entered, carrying a tote bag from the Outer Banks Public Library. Short white hair, gold oval glasses, calm posture. I had seen her once or twice before in the hallway. Hello, she said. Marge Holcomb, Unit 306. Iris Outen, Unit 412. She studied my face for a second. Iris, she said, I think we should talk before Saturday. The elevator reached the lobby, and we walked together toward one of the seating areas near the front windows. Honey, Marge said while sitting down, 2 women in this building have called me this week asking questions about you. They both said a woman named Diane contacted them claiming you recently lost your parents and seemed unstable. My jaw tightened. That's my brother's mother-in-law, I said. Marge nodded slowly. I figured, she replied. I spent 31 years as a court reporter in Norfolk before retiring here. I know exactly what a smear campaign sounds like. Then she smiled slightly. She tried it on me too. I told her I'd only met you once, but you seemed perfectly fine, and she was welcome to call again after finding a more interesting hobby. For the first time in 3 days, I smiled genuinely. The reception is Saturday at 6, Marge continued. I'm at table 4. I've got an empty chair beside me. Take it. Bring your lawyer, too, if you have one. I do, I said. Then you're set, sweetheart. I'll save the seat. She patted my arm, stood, and walked away carrying her library tote bag. I watched her leave. Then I returned upstairs and laid my navy dress across the bed for Saturday evening. Thursday night, after sunset turned the sound gray, I opened the bedroom closet and took down the cedar lockbox. I placed it carefully on the floor and sat cross-legged in front of it like I used to sit in front of the Christmas tree as a child. The cedar smell rose immediately. Workshop dust, pencil shavings, Dad's hands. For a moment, I closed my eyes. Then I unlocked the box with the brass key and lifted the lid. I had already left Mom's sealed envelope inside safety deposit box 247 earlier that week, but I had never really examined the contents of the cedar box itself. Inside were Dad's personal keepsakes, his old watch, his wedding band, 2 photographs of him as a young man in military fatigues, and a small wooden owl he carved the year I was born. But tucked inside a thin canvas pocket beneath the lid, a pocket I had somehow never noticed in 25 years, was another cream-colored envelope in Mom's handwriting. The same words appeared across the front. Iris, read when you need it. Not before. She had made 2 copies to make sure I would eventually see one. I opened the envelope carefully. 2 pages. The handwriting was neat and steady, the same style she used for grocery lists and classroom notes. She wrote that by the time I read the letter, someone would probably tell me I owed them more than the will provided. She warned me they would disguise pressure as love and obligation. She told me not to believe it. Then she wrote, "Your father and I made the will the way we did because we watched. We watched who showed up. We watched who didn't. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are the last gift I can give you." I read the letter 3 times. Friday morning, Carolyn emailed the final drafts. 4 cease and desist letters on official Puet and Hayes letterhead, each detailed and specific. Letter A, Trent. Unauthorized entry into my condo, removal of my keys, attempted lock access, threatening voicemails, all future communication required through counsel, certified mail mandatory. Letter B, Whit. Everything included in Trent's letter plus documentation of the unauthorized Zillow listing draft. Carolyn had even pulled records from the public Zillow agent portal. Letter C, Diane. Cease and desist regarding false statements made to neighbors about my mental stability. Carolyn included the exact state statute involved. I read that paragraph twice. Letter D, Bart. Cease and desist plus a drafted complaint to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission for coercive solicitation practices involving a family member. I printed all 4 letters, addressed every envelope by hand, white legal envelopes marked in black ink. Then I placed them into the same canvas tote I carried to the bank vault, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar. At 4 o'clock, I called Carolyn. "Saturday confirmed?" she asked. 6 o'clock. "Meet me in the lobby at 5:45. "I'll wear a black blazer," she said. "I'll be in Navy." "Perfect," she replied. "We'll match." I laughed, then almost cried immediately afterward because I hadn't laughed in months. That night, I went to bed at 9 with the tote bag sitting beside the bed and the letters inside. Carolyn and I agreed I would only hand them out if the 4 of them showed up and caused problems at the reception. But deep down, I already knew they would. Saturday morning, I woke at 6:15. The water outside looked silver. The herons had returned. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, and ate breakfast beside the sliding door. My dress was already laid out from the night before the sale. Navy. I read Mom's letter one more time at the kitchen table. Low black heels that wouldn't make me taller than Carolyn. Then I placed them both back inside the cedar box, and the only jewelry piece from her collection that I kept. At 5:30, Marge knocked on my door. I had told her I would head downstairs at 5:45, but she arrived early, dressed in a lavender pantsuit with a small pearl necklace, looking exactly like someone who had spent decades in courtrooms and had never once been late. "You ready, honey?" she asked. "I think so." She studied me for a moment longer than necessary, then nodded. In the elevator, the floor numbers counted down one by one. The car was empty except for us. Marge looked at her reflection in the brass panel. "You don't need to prove anything tonight, Iris. Just remember, you live here. They don't." "I don't need to prove I belong," I said quietly, mostly to myself. "I just need to remember that I do." She turned toward me and nodded once. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, Caroline was already standing near the front desk in her black blazer, carrying a slim leather portfolio under her arm. Robert was there too, and he gave me a quick thumbs up that meant more than he probably realized. And Trent was there. Whit was there. Diane was there carrying a green Pyrex casserole dish covered in foil. Bart was there too, wearing a tan realtor's blazer with a small enamel pin on the lapel. They had arrived before us. This was the part I replayed in my mind for weeks afterward. If you've ever stood in front of relatives who treated you like a problem to solve, then you understand this moment, the moment you finally want them to recognize the weight you've been carrying. If this story connects with you, subscribe before we walk into the reception, and tell me in the comments, who's your Carolyn? The lobby at Soundfront Condominiums had been transformed into a small ballroom for the evening. 6 round tables covered with white cloths, small hydrangea centerpieces in mason jars, a cheese board large enough to cover a coffee table, sparkling cider in glass pitchers, soft jazz playing from a speaker in the corner, the kind nobody really listens to. Around 40 residents had gathered, couples in their 70s, 2 younger families from the 3rd floor. Mrs. Henley, the HOA president, a retired accountant in a peach silk blouse with a tortoiseshell hair clip, called the room to attention to introduce the 3 new residents who had moved in that month. And finally, she said warmly, our newest resident, Iris Outen, in Unit 412. Iris, give us a wave. I waved. Polite applause followed. I sat at table 4 with Marge on my right and Caroline on my left. The 2 empty chairs at our table stayed empty. At 6:18, the lobby doors opened. Diane entered first, carrying the Pyrex dish like a peace offering. Trent followed behind her, then Whit, then Bart in the realtor's blazer. None of them had been invited because none of them lived there. Diane walked directly to Mrs. Henley. We're so sorry to interrupt, she said sweetly. We're family of the new resident. We just came to support our Iris. Mrs. Henley, caught off guard, responded politely and waved them inside. Diane placed the Pyrex dish on the side table beside the cheese board. It was the same casserole dish she had brought to my condo earlier that week, complete with a hidden note under the lid. She had washed it and brought it back tonight, almost like a symbol. Caroline didn't react. Marge didn't react. Neither did I. The jazz continued playing. Whit scanned the room until she found me. Then she smiled, the same practiced smile she had used at the funeral, and walked toward our table. Trent followed. Diane followed. Bart came last, glancing toward the food like a man wondering how quickly he could leave. Diane reached the table first. She didn't sit. Instead, she gripped the back of the empty chair beside me. Iris, sweetheart, she announced loudly enough for the room to hear. We all need to clear the air. You can't keep avoiding family. It isn't healthy for you, and it isn't fair to your brother. Nearly 30 people turned to look. The jazz kept playing. Trent stepped beside her. He looked exhausted, like someone who had been pushed into the situation rather than choosing it himself. Iris, he said, you took my share. You bought all this with our parents' money. You owe me a real conversation. I'm asking for one. Whit placed a hand dramatically over her chest. We've tried so hard to be patient with you, Iris. You won't even answer the phone. Near the cheese board, Bart gave Mrs. Henley a calm realtor smile. We're only here to mediate, ma'am. Nobody wants a scene. Diane raised her voice slightly higher. Honey, family doesn't keep secrets from family. Be the bigger person. You don't need this house more than your brother's children do. It landed exactly the way she intended. The same line Trent had used earlier in my condo. You don't need this house. Only now she was saying it in front of 40 strangers while pretending it came from concern. Marge quietly set down her cider. Caroline remained perfectly still. I looked at Diane, then at Trent, then Whit, then Bart, who at least lowered his eyes when I looked at him. The room waited. I reached down and lifted the canvas tote from beside my chair onto my lap. I opened it. At that exact moment, the jazz music ended on a soft final chord and didn't restart. I removed 4 large white envelopes addressed by hand in black ink. Then I stood and walked the few steps toward them in the center of the room. I handed envelope A to Trent first. He accepted it automatically, the way people do when something is handed to them. He didn't open it. He only stared at me. I gave envelope B to Whit. She held it with both hands, as if she couldn't tell whether it was a gift or something else. Envelope C went to Diane. Her hand trembled slightly as she took it. She stopped gripping the chair. Envelope D went to Bart. The moment he looked down at it, his face noticeably paled. I kept my voice calm. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioner running. Inside each envelope, I said, is exactly what each of you has been asking for. Clarity. That was all I said. Caroline stepped forward, holding one of her business cards. She placed it on the table in front of Trent. "Carolyn Puit," she said professionally. "Partner at Puit and Hayes. I'm Iris's attorney of record. I strongly recommend you read the contents before continuing this discussion." Trent slowly opened envelope A. The will was on top. He stared at the title page for several seconds before flipping to the codicil. He read the section identifying me as the primary caregiver. Then he reached my father's handwritten letter. For the first time since the funeral, his expression changed. His eyes filled briefly with tears. "Dad wrote this," he said softly. I nodded once. His lip trembled as though he wanted to speak, maybe to me, maybe only to himself. Whit suddenly grabbed the letter from his hands. "She's lying. Trent, this is fake." He shook his head slowly. "Whit, that's Dad's handwriting." Her expression hardened immediately. "Don't be weak, Trent. She's manipulating you. We already talked about this." Diane had opened her envelope too. In one hand, she held the cease and desist letter, and in the other, Caroline's business card. Her mouth remained open in shock. Bart quietly set his envelope beside the cheese board and stared at the floor. Diane recovered first by raising her voice. "This is an ambush. You invited us here just to embarrass us in front of strangers." I stayed calm. "Mrs. Caldwell," I said, "none of you were invited. You introduced yourselves to Mrs. Henley as family of the new resident. 40 people here heard you say it." Marge stood from the table. Though she was only 4'10", she looked at Diane with the authority of someone who had spent years around courtrooms. "I heard her say it," Marge stated. "Mrs. Henley heard it. The ladies from 601 heard it too." Mrs. Henley nodded once. "I did." Whit shifted tactics instantly. Tears appeared quickly and naturally. "Iris, you don't understand what this has done to our family. To Trent, he cries himself to sleep. Do you even care what he's been carrying?" I looked at Trent, who was staring at the floor. "Whitney," I replied, "you are the only person in this room who cried about my mother in front of me before tonight." My mother. Trent visited her 3 times in 14 months. His longest visit lasted 40 minutes. Near the food table, Bart tried to interrupt. "Why don't we all just step outside and calm down?" "No one is stepping outside," If Caroline answered evenly. "And the cease and desist notices are effective immediately. Any further contact with my client goes through me. My office number is included in every packet." Diane lifted the paper shakily. "This is harassment. You can't just..." "I actually can," Caroline replied calmly, "and I suggest you review page 2 regarding the privacy violation statute." Diane went silent. Trent still hadn't moved. He carefully folded Dad's letter the same way he had folded the funeral flag months earlier, then placed it into his shirt pocket. Diane found her voice one last time. "What do you have to say for yourself, Iris? Look around. Everyone here is watching you." I did look around. 40 residents, my future neighbors, people who would likely remain part of my life for years. Then I looked at Trent again. His eyes were red, but I knew he wasn't going to apologize. I could see years of choices sitting beneath the surface. His debts, his marriage, his responsibilities, the version of himself that may still have existed somewhere underneath all of it. Then I looked at Diane. "The lockbox already said everything," I told her quietly. "You just refused to read it." Then I turned around, walked back to table 4, and sat between Marge and Caroline. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Whit grabbed Trent's arm and pulled him toward the exit. He followed without resistance. Diane snatched her purse and turned for the casserole dish. Bart instinctively picked up the green Pyrex and followed after her. The doors closed behind them. Silence. Then Marge clapped once, softly. Mrs. Henley cleared her throat. "Well," she said, "let's get to the food." 28 days passed after that night. The cease and desist letters were officially delivered the following Tuesday by certified mail. All 4 receipts came back signed within the week. Trent hired a lawyer in Greenville who returned Caroline's call within 48 hours and explained, in polite legal language, that his client would not pursue further contact. The lawyer billed Trent $620 and advised him to stop speaking publicly about the matter. Whit unfollowed me on Instagram. Bart's draft Zillow listing disappeared. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission opened a preliminary file regarding Bart's conduct and issued a warning letter. No suspension followed. Diane mailed me a pink apology card with a watercolor hummingbird on the front. I read it once, then placed it in a shoebox in my closet beside the cedar box. I never responded. Trent sent one final email, 4 lines, no subject. I read what Dad wrote. I'm sorry I didn't read it sooner. I won't bother you again. I hope you're okay. I saved it in a folder labeled Family. I didn't reply. At the end of the month, the numbers were simple. $1,840 in legal fees, 4 envelopes served, 0 concessions made, 0 additional incidents. 1 quiet condo, 4 floors above the sound, with a locked door and a deadbolt that worked. On the morning of day 29, I opened the cedar box again. I thought I had already seen everything inside it. The owl carving, the wedding band, the old photographs, the hidden canvas pocket where Mom left her letter. But that morning, simply wanting to feel close to my parents again, I lifted the felt liner from the bottom of the box. Underneath was a small velvet pouch the color of old red wine. I had never seen it before. Inside was my mother's silver locket, the one I thought had been sold during the estate sale along with the rest of her jewelry. She had hidden it there for me. When I opened the locket, the tiny photograph inside showed me at 6 years old sitting on my father's lap on the front porch of the Elm Street house. I was holding a melting ice cream cone while he laughed beside me. On the back of the pouch, written in Mom's handwriting, were 3 lines. You are always enough by yourself. Don't forget. Love, Mom. I put the locket on immediately. The chain rested perfectly at my collarbone, like it had always belonged there. Family is not simply the people who share your last name. Family is the person who read your father's letter the first time and didn't need a second explanation. That's the story. 1 lockbox, 4 envelopes, 40 witnesses, and a quiet silver locket I still wear today. If this story reminds you to organize your own paperwork or keep certified copies somewhere secure, take that as your sign. Subscribe, leave a comment, and thanks for listening.